A masterpiece can survive 500 years of terrible wars, fires, and dangerous floods. But it cannot survive the selfish greed of one modern man. My name is Emma. I was the top art restorer at the National Museum. I spent my days touching history. I loved fixing beautiful, ancient paintings. For 3 months, I worked on a newly discovered Renaissance portrait. It was a priceless national treasure. The woman in the painting had beautiful, deep eyes. I cleaned the old dirt from her face very carefully. Every single brushstroke felt like a quiet, magical conversation with a ghost from the past. One rainy evening, the museum director walked into my bright, clean laboratory. His name was Victor. He was a tall, rich man who always wore expensive suits. He smiled warmly and looked at the beautiful portrait. "You're a true genius, Emma," he said smoothly. He seemed very happy with my work. Victor brought me a cup of hot, sweet coffee. He said I needed to rest. I drank the coffee and thanked him. He left the room, and I continued working. A few minutes later, my head felt incredibly heavy. My eyes closed, and I fell into a very deep, dark sleep. The next morning, I woke up on the cold floor of my laboratory. My head hurt terribly. I slowly stood up and looked at the priceless Renaissance painting. My heart stopped beating. I could not breathe. The beautiful face of the woman was completely gone. Someone had poured strong, dangerous acid all over the ancient canvas. The thick paint was melting and dripping onto the floor like colorful tears. The priceless masterpiece was completely destroyed. I fell to my knees and started crying loudly. Suddenly, the laboratory door opened. 3 serious police officers rushed into the room. Victor walked in behind them. He pointed his finger directly at me. He looked incredibly angry and shocked. "She destroyed it," Victor shouted to the police. "Arrest her immediately." I shook my head, totally confused and terrified. The police officers grabbed my arms. They showed me a video on a small screen. It was from the museum's security camera. The dark, blurry video showed a person wearing my exact white laboratory coat. The person was pouring a bottle of acid directly onto the priceless painting. "That is not me," I screamed loudly. I was sleeping. The coffee was poisoned. But the police officers did not listen to my words. They put cold metal handcuffs on my wrists. Victor watched them take me away. He did not look angry anymore. He had a small, cruel smile on his face. The trap was completely perfect. Victor had planned everything. The drugged coffee made sure I had no alibi. The white coat on the security camera was the perfect fake evidence. I was just a simple art restorer, and I was going to prison for destroying a national treasure. As the police car drove away, I realized a terrible truth. The man I trusted had completely ruined my life. I did not know why he did it, but my beautiful world of art and history was gone forever. I was trapped in a very dark, dangerous nightmare. The next few weeks were a terrible, dark storm. The museum officially fired me. The government completely canceled my professional art license. I stood in a large courtroom while an angry judge yelled at me. He ordered me to pay $20 million to the museum for the destroyed painting. I had absolutely no money. I lost my small apartment and all my beautiful art supplies. I was completely homeless. I had to sleep on cold park benches in the rain. Everyone in the city hated me. The newspapers called me the crazy girl who destroyed history. One cold night, I sat under a streetlight. I found an old newspaper in the garbage. The front page showed a large, clear photo of the melted painting. I looked at the sad picture. I remembered every single millimeter of that beautiful canvas. I looked closer at the bottom corner of the picture. My eyes are highly trained to see tiny details. I noticed a very small drop of white paint that the acid did not melt. The color was extremely bright. It was much too bright for a Renaissance painting. My heart started to beat very fast. That specific white color was titanium white. I knew the history of pigments perfectly. Titanium white was only invented in the 20th century. A painter from 500 years ago could never use that modern chemical color. The truth hit me like a heavy stone. The painting that melted in my laboratory was a fake. It was a cheap modern copy. Victor did not destroy the real masterpiece. He secretly stole the real painting and left the fake copy for the acid. I felt a sudden rush of hope. This was the perfect proof of my innocence. The next morning, I ran to the city police station. I asked to speak with the lead inspector of my case. I proudly showed him the newspaper photo and explained the modern paint. The inspector looked at the photo. He did not look surprised. He slowly stood up and locked his office door. He walked very close to me. His eyes were cold and dangerous. He pulled his gun out and placed it heavily on his wooden desk. "You are a very smart girl, Emma," the inspector whispered cruelly. "But you need to be quiet. If you ever talk about this modern paint again, you will have a terrible accident." He smiled a dark, scary smile. The police inspector was not going to help me at all. I realized the horrible, deep corruption. Victor had used his massive wealth to buy the police inspector. The system was completely broken and rotten. I could not use the law to fight this powerful monster. I grabbed the newspaper and ran out of the police station in pure terror. I ran back into the dark, wet streets of the city. I was alone against a giant wall of dirty money and power. The police would not save me. If I wanted to prove my innocence, I had to fight outside the law. I had to use my own magic. I hid deep in the poorest, darkest part of the city. It was a dangerous slum full of broken buildings and sad people. I knew Victor and his corrupt police friends would not look for me here. I needed a safe place to plan my ultimate revenge. I walked past a massive, abandoned wheat silo. It was a giant, round concrete tower touching the sky. The walls were completely gray and empty. It was the biggest, most perfect blank canvas I had ever seen. I knew exactly what I had to do. I used the small coins I begged from strangers to buy cheap, colorful paint. I started painting the bottom of the giant silo. I painted beautiful, bright colors over the dirty concrete. A group of dangerous street gang members walked toward me. They carried heavy baseball bats. I felt afraid, but I did not stop painting. The gang leader stopped and looked at my artwork. He had many tattoos on his face. Suddenly, he smiled. "This is real street art," he said with deep respect. He loved graffiti. He told his men to protect me from the police. With the gang's protection, I worked day and night. But regular paint was not enough for my master plan. I needed a very special, high-tech weapon. Late one night, I secretly broke into an abandoned chemical factory outside the city. I did not steal money or equipment. I only stole a few specific organic chemical compounds. I was a master of chemistry and art restoration. I mixed the stolen chemicals with my cheap paint in a dirty bucket. I successfully created a powerful, invisible paint. It was completely clear in normal daylight. This special paint would only glow brightly under strong ultraviolet light. It was my secret, invisible weapon. I climbed the dangerous, rusty stairs of the giant silo. I started painting a huge, beautiful mural. I mixed the bright, normal colors with my secret, invisible UV paint. I painted the face of the woman from the stolen Renaissance painting. I painted her eyes extremely large. The eyes looked deeply into the soul of the city. Every time I painted a dark shadow, I secretly painted special invisible lines next to it. I was building a giant, invisible puzzle. Nobody in the slum knew what I was really doing. They just thought I was a homeless girl painting a pretty picture. They brought me hot soup and old blankets. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of family. My plan was slowly coming together. I was turning a broken, forgotten tower into a massive weapon of truth. Victor thought he had buried me in the dirt. But he forgot that a true artist can turn the darkest dirt into a beautiful, dangerous masterpiece. After 3 weeks of hard work, my giant mural was half finished. The beautiful face covered the entire side of the massive concrete silo. I named the painting Justice. The woman's huge, deep eyes looked sadly over the dirty slum. The artwork was completely breathtaking. One afternoon, a famous teenage vlogger walked into the slum. He was looking for dangerous places to film his internet videos. He saw my giant mural and stopped in pure shock. He immediately pulled out his camera and recorded a live video for his millions of followers. "You guys have to see this," the vlogger shouted excitedly to his camera. "A homeless girl is painting the most amazing masterpiece in the world." The video spread across the internet like a wildfire. By the next morning, my painting was a global viral sensation. Thousands of tourists started coming to the dangerous slum. They brought expensive cameras to take pictures of Justice. The poor neighborhood suddenly became the most famous tourist attraction in the city. News helicopters flew above the silo, recording my every brushstroke for the evening television news. In his expensive, modern office, Victor watched the television. He saw the face of the Renaissance woman on the giant tower. He instantly recognized my unique painting style. He knew the famous homeless artist was me. He picked up his phone and called the local news station. Victor appeared on a live television interview that night. He wore a beautiful suit and a fake, sad smile. "This girl is not an artist," Victor lied smoothly to the camera. "She is a dangerous, crazy criminal. She destroyed a national treasure, and now she is vandalizing public property. She is just a dirty street rat trying to get attention." Victor laughed cruelly on the news. He felt incredibly confident and safe. He truly believed that a homeless girl with cheap paint could never hurt a powerful, rich museum director. He completely underestimated my intelligence. I watched Victor's interview on a small, broken television in the slum. I did not feel angry. I actually smiled. Victor's cruel insults only brought more media attention to my mural. He was playing exactly into my hands. The entire world was finally looking directly at my canvas. The giant eyes of my painting stared back at the city. The trap was growing larger every single day. But a beautiful painting was not enough to send a rich man to prison. I needed absolute, undeniable digital proof of his terrible crimes to finish my masterpiece. The giant mural was almost finished. But the invisible paint I used was useless without real information. I needed Victor's darkest secrets. I sat with the gang leader one evening. I told him I needed to find a ghost in the machine. I needed a master computer hacker. The gang leader smiled and nodded. He led me into a deep, dark basement under an old bakery. The room was full of glowing computer screens. A young woman sat in the dark, typing incredibly fast. She was a famous, anonymous hacker on the dangerous dark web. "I need you to break into the private server of the museum director," I told the hacker. "I have no money, but I can paint a perfect portrait of anyone you love." The hacker looked at me. She agreed to the trade. She wanted a portrait of her late mother. The hacker's fingers danced across her keyboard for 3 days. Victor had very expensive, high-level computer security. But the young hacker was a true digital genius. On the 4th night, she finally broke through his heavy firewalls. She entered his secret, private digital vault. She found hundreds of dirty financial documents. Victor had stolen many ancient artifacts over the years. But the hacker found something much more important. It was a highly encrypted, secret video file. It was hidden deep in a folder labeled insurance. "He kept a video to protect himself," the hacker whispered, her eyes shining in the dark room. She used a powerful program to unlock the heavy encryption. The video slowly opened on the large computer screen. My heart stopped beating as I watched the dark recording. The video showed a dark, underground parking garage. Victor was standing nervously next to a black luxury car. He was holding the real, priceless Renaissance painting in his hands. He was waiting for the secret buyer from the black market. The buyer stepped out of the dark shadows to take the painting. He handed Victor a large, silver metal briefcase full of money. I finally had the absolute proof I needed. Victor did not destroy the painting, he sold it. The missing puzzle piece was finally in my hands. But the video was not finished. The buyer turned his face toward the camera for just 1 second. The hacker paused the video perfectly. I stared at the frozen face on the computer screen. A cold, terrifying shock hit my body. I could not believe my eyes. I stared at the frozen face on the computer screen. I forgot how to breathe. The man buying the stolen painting was not a dangerous gangster. He was not a rich, unknown foreign billionaire. I knew that familiar, smiling face perfectly well. The secret buyer was the Minister of Culture. He was the highest government leader of art in the entire country. Just 1 year ago, this exact man had smiled and given me a shiny gold medal for my excellent restoration work. It was a complete, mind-blowing nightmare. Victor was just a simple, greedy broker. The Minister of Culture was the real mastermind. The minister used public money to secretly buy the stolen national treasures for his own private collection. The entire system of art and law was deeply, terribly rotten from the very top. "I need to call the police right now," the hacker said, reaching for her phone. I quickly grabbed her hand and stopped her. "No," I said firmly. "The police inspector works for Victor. The minister controls the entire government. They will delete the video and kill us both." I realized the terrifying truth. I could not trust the police, the judges, or the media. If I gave this video to one person, the powerful minister would easily crush it. I had to expose the dark truth to millions of people at the exact same time. I asked the hacker to copy the video file, Victor's bank records, and the corrupt police emails. Put all these files onto a safe, public cloud server, I ordered. Create a single download link. I need you to turn that link into a digital QR code. The hacker nodded quickly. She pressed a few buttons. A black and white square QR code appeared on her screen. I took a picture of the code with my phone. This small, digital square held the power to destroy the most powerful men in the country. I thanked the hacker and ran out of the dark basement. I ran back to the giant, abandoned silo. The sun was just starting to rise. I climbed the dangerous scaffolding holding my buckets of invisible UV paint. My hands were shaking with pure adrenaline. I had to paint this complex QR code perfectly into the giant eyes of my mural. If I made one tiny mistake, the code would not scan. I was painting a digital ghost into a classical masterpiece. The final trap was ready, but the enemy was already moving against me. I worked for 20 hours without sleeping. I carefully painted the invisible digital squares using my special UV chemical paint. My arms ached and my eyes were burning. I finally finished the complex QR code perfectly. I climbed down the rusty stairs to rest on the ground. Suddenly, I heard a terrible, loud mechanical noise. I looked down the dirty street. 3 massive, yellow bulldozers were driving slowly toward the slum. Behind the heavy machines, several government cars parked on the street. The Minister of Culture stepped out of a black car. The minister looked up at the giant eyes of my mural. He felt a deep, guilty fear. He did not know about the invisible QR code. He was just terrified of the viral painting drawing attention to the stolen art. He wanted to destroy my work immediately. The minister held up a white paper and spoke through a loud megaphone. "This silo is a dangerous, illegal structure," he announced to the slum. "I have signed an emergency demolition order. We are tearing this building down right now for public safety." My heart dropped into my stomach. My invisible trap was finished, but I had not trapped the rats yet. If the bulldozers destroyed the wall today, all my hard work and the evidence would turn to dust. The yellow machines turned on their engines, ready to smash the concrete. But then a beautiful miracle happened. The gang leader walked out into the street. He did not carry a weapon. He simply walked to the front of the giant silo and stood firmly in front of the machines. Then an old woman from the bakery stood next to him. Within 5 minutes, hundreds of poor people from the slum ran into the street. Young children, tired workers, and street artists all joined hands. They formed a massive, unbreakable human shield around the entire building. They were protecting my art with their own bodies. The bulldozer drivers stopped their heavy machines. They refused to run over innocent families. The minister's face turned bright red with pure anger. He yelled at the police to remove the people, but the crowd was too large. The news helicopters were already filming the drama from the sky. "You have exactly 24 hours. The minister screamed into the megaphone. "Tomorrow, the police will clear this street by force, and this ugly wall will fall." He angrily got back into his black car and drove away. The poor people of the slum cheered loudly. They had fought the government and won one precious day. I hugged the gang leader, crying tears of deep gratitude. The human shield had given me 24 hours to execute my final, brilliant move. The grand opening was tomorrow. The next evening, Victor was hosting a massive, elegant gala at the National Museum. It was a very special party to open a new art gallery. The Minister of Culture, Hundreds of rich politicians and many famous international journalists were all dressed in expensive clothes, ready for the party. But the young hacker in the basement was also ready. She easily broke into the museum's email system. 1 hour before the gala, she sent a fake, urgent message to every single guest and journalist. The email looked exactly like an official museum announcement. Special surprise location change. The fake email read, "The grand opening of the century will happen at the famous Justice mural in the historic district." The email promised a spectacular, secret art reveal. The rich guests and the media loved secret events. They all changed their driving directions immediately. Instead of going to the clean, boring museum, hundreds of luxury cars and news vans drove directly into the dirty slum. The journalists set up their bright cameras facing the giant silo. The crowd of rich people stood in the dark street, confused but very excited. At the empty museum, Victor realized what had happened. His grand party was completely ruined. He was incredibly angry. He grabbed his phone and called the corrupt police inspector. "Bring the riot police to the slum right now," Victor screamed. "Arrest that homeless girl for inciting a riot." 20 minutes later, loud police sirens echoed through the slum. Victor and the minister arrived with 30 heavily armed riot police officers. The police pushed aggressively through the crowd of rich guests and journalists. Victor pointed his finger directly at me standing near the wall. "Arrest her," Victor yelled loudly for all the cameras to hear. "She is a dangerous criminal. She hacked our systems and ruined a government event." The police officers ran toward me with heavy metal handcuffs. The crowd gasped in shock, watching the drama unfold on live television. I did not run away. I did not fight the officers. I simply stood perfectly still in front of my giant painting. I smiled a calm, peaceful smile. Victor thought he had finally won. He thought he was crushing a weak bug under his expensive shoe. He did not realize that I had invited the entire world to his own funeral. The stage was perfectly set. The cameras were rolling. The false kings were standing exactly where I wanted them. It was time to turn on the magic lights. 2 large police officers grabbed my arms tightly. The bright flashes from the journalists' cameras lit up my face. Victor walked proudly toward me, smiling for the international news. "You are crazy, Emma," Victor said loudly. "You're just a dirty vandal painting ugly trash on a wall." I looked directly into Victor's eyes. I did not show any fear. "True art always hides just below the surface, Victor," I said clearly. I nodded my head toward the gang leader standing in the crowd. The tough man smiled and quickly pulled a heavy electrical switch on the street. Instantly, all the yellow street lights in the slum turned completely off. The crowd gasped in the sudden darkness. A second later, a loud buzzing sound filled the air. My friends had secretly installed massive, powerful ultraviolet lights on the roofs of the surrounding buildings. The invisible UV lights turned on, shining directly onto the giant silo. The normal paint completely disappeared in the dark. The beautiful face of the woman vanished. Instead, my secret chemical paint absorbed the ultraviolet energy and began to glow with a bright, terrifying, neon green light. A massive, perfect QR code appeared on the tower. It was 50 feet tall and perfectly square. It glowed like a giant digital ghost in the dark night. The crowd of rich guests and journalists stared in absolute, silent shock. It was the most amazing magic trick they had ever seen. "What is that?" the minister yelled nervously, stepping backward. "Turn the lights back on." But it was too late. The modern world relies on curiosity. Hundreds of journalists and guests automatically pulled out their mobile phones. They pointed their cameras up at the glowing green wall. Their smartphones instantly recognized the massive, glowing squares. Every single phone in the street beeped loudly at the exact same time. The giant QR code worked perfectly. The phones automatically opened a public website and began downloading the hidden files at lightning speed. Victor looked at the glowing wall in total confusion. He did not understand technology. But as the journalists looked down at their phone screens, their faces changed from amazed to completely horrified. They were looking at the dark, dirty truth. The trap had snapped shut perfectly. The invisible paint had revealed the ultimate masterpiece of truth. The powerful men were completely surrounded by hundreds of cameras, and their dirty secrets were now glowing in the hands of the entire world. The journalists started reading the downloaded files on their bright phone screens. A famous news reporter gasped loudly. "This is a video of the Minister of Culture," she shouted to the crowd. "He is buying the stolen Renaissance painting from Victor. It is a massive black market deal." Another journalist held up his phone. "I have Victor's secret bank records here. And emails from the corrupt police inspector." The crowd of rich guests started yelling in shock and anger. The news cameras quickly turned away from the glowing wall and pointed directly at Victor and the minister. Victor's face turned completely white. He let go of his expensive jacket. He turned around and tried to run away into the dark alley. But the heavy crowd of angry people blocked his path completely. He was trapped like a scared rat in a cage. Suddenly, black vans with loud sirens drove into the slum. They were not local police. They were highly trained federal FBI agents. They had been secretly monitoring the downloaded files on the internet. Heavily armed agents rushed out and grabbed the corrupt local police inspector first. Then, two large FBI agents tackled Victor to the wet ground. They pulled his arms back and locked tight metal handcuffs on his wrists. The Minister of Culture tried to hide in his luxury car, but agents surrounded the vehicle and dragged the crying politician out into the street. The local police officers quickly let go of my arms. They stepped back, looking terribly embarrassed. The FBI commander walked up to me. He did not look angry. He looked at the glowing QR code and smiled. "That is the most brilliant evidence drop in history, ma'am," he said respectfully. Victor screamed as they pushed him into a police car. His entire corrupt empire was destroyed in less than 5 minutes. The truth was out, and I was finally free. The terrible debt was completely erased, and my professional art license was immediately restored by the federal court. A few months later, the National Museum begged me to return as the head director. I respectfully declined their offer. I did not want to work in a sterile, quiet building anymore. I had found my true home in the loud, colorful streets. I used the generous donations from people around the world to buy the giant, abandoned silo. I transformed the old tower into a free, beautiful art school for the poor children of the slum. We painted the walls with bright, happy colors every single day. I proved that art is not just an expensive object for rich men to hide in dark vaults. Art is a powerful, invisible weapon. When you shine the right light on the darkness, the truth will always glow beautifully for the whole world to see.